Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. And on Tuesday night, we got our first look at the 2026 schedule for the Big Ten Conference. Lots to be able to get into here. Before we get out of here, we'll highlight some of our favorite games. But I was curious, Danny, where would you like to start in terms of the storylines? Like what really stood out to you in terms of the big picture overarching thoughts with what we learned on Tuesday?
So I would say I would start with the national champion, the Indiana Hoosiers, who have had a very, easier, I wouldn't say very easier path than most. I think it's significantly harder this year. The non-conference is not. Remember, this was the year I think we were supposed to get Virginia, which I would have loved to have seen just for another non-conference challenge that Indiana backed out of a year ago, paid their way out of. So the non-conference is easy, and it starts off easy. But Ohio State, Michigan, back-to-back weeks, and then USC, Washington in your 2 out of your last 3, I think is a more significant path for the Hoosiers this season.
Interesting note here. So Indiana and Oregon face Ohio State and Michigan in back-to-back weeks. That's tough.
Yeah.
Those are two Big Ten title contenders in Indiana and Oregon, maybe among Ohio State as well. Both of them have to do it. For Indiana, for those of you who are not watching on youtube.com/cover3, Indiana will play host to Ohio State in week 7 before traveling to Michigan in week 8. The Oregon Ducks are away to Ohio State in week 10 before hosting Michigan in week 11. So those games a little bit later on in November. I tell you what, this Ohio State schedule is kind of a monster. Now, obviously, we've got the return visit with Texas. That is going to be one of the biggest games in college football the entire year. They're going to be top 5 teams once again. But then you start to really break it down, and you've got a road trip to Indiana. You've got a road trip to USC. You've got a road trip to Iowa. You have Oregon coming to Columbus. You've got Michigan coming to Columbus. So between Michigan, Oregon, USC, Indiana, maybe Illinois, Texas, I mean, we're talking 5 to 6 top 25 teams all on that schedule for the Buckeyes. I've seen some Ohio State fans mention it is one of the toughest schedules that Ohio State has faced in years. I think that's a fascinating landscape for Ohio State in a year where year 3, Jeremiah Smith, right? Julian Sayin trying to bounce back, and the Buckeyes in general trying to bounce back after going from 12-0 to 12-2 and out of the college football playoff.
Did you mention Iowa on the road?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like that. There's 5 or 6 easily, I think, teams that probably will finish in the top 25. It's brutal. I think the question will come up, like, what record gets you in? I think 10-2, you are safely in to the college football playoff. And I think it's one of those schedules that if you're 9-3 and you beat the right ones and one's a tough loss, I think they could be in that conversation for a 3-loss team. And I'm sure Buckeye fans are like, hey, we're going to cruise again. We're just going to run the table, which maybe they do. But that is going to be and I think Texas will be a much tougher matchup than it was last year. That was Arch's first game. Arch is much improved. This one's on the road. So, yeah, I think Ohio State clearly has one of the better, tougher schedules out there.
I also, sort of on that note, I don't think January 28th, bold prediction. I do not think a Big Ten team will be 12-0 at the end of the season.
Boy, you're just giving like bulletin board material for Kirk Cignetti right now.
I do not think
do it. You're good for you're going to say good. I agree with you. I do think it will be harder than ever to run the table and be undefeated. I would agree with you. Now, all these schedules look brutal.
Because where would you draw the tier for the top tier?
For what? Like record wise?
Yeah, like when you're trying to stack them. Like for me, I think I would say Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana, and then maybe draw the line and then get into a Michigan USC type conversation.
Yeah.
But those three are the ones that when I'm really trying to say who could go 12-0, those are the teams I would consider. And a lot of them all play each other. And I don't see one being able to truly separate from the pack.
Agreed.
The
Penn State, I do think it's a pretty manageable schedule for Penn State and Matt Campbell's first year. That's why I thought this job would be very attractive and, somebody who could step in and win right away. Once again, the non-conference is very doable. USC will be at home, Michigan on the road, but the back end, Washington on the road will be tricky, but Purdue, Minnesota, Rutgers, Maryland to finish it out. Like if you can just get to your bye week with one loss and maybe undefeated, like you're looking at a really good situation to finish off the season with.
I'm glad you mentioned Penn State. I think Penn State has the most favorable schedule in the Big Ten. I think that's like for Matt Campbell to be able to walk in and have the warm up of Marshall, Temple, Buffalo. Then your first conference game is Wisconsin at home. Your road trips before you get to Washington, which is fair, but before you get to Washington, your road trips are Chicago for Northwestern, Ann Arbor, get a bye, Purdue. I mean, the fact that Penn State goes through and they don't play Indiana, they don't play Ohio State, they don't play Oregon. Those are the three teams that I just mentioned as the top tier.
Right.
That screams to me as almost Indiana 2024, where you're going to have like a high total and everyone's going to be screaming about them. Like, wait, no, they haven't played anybody. That is the challenge for Matt Campbell, because if Matt Campbell goes 7-5 or 8-4 against this schedule, it's going to be a disappointment.
Yeah.
Matt Campbell with the Penn State, Iowa State Cyclones needs to be able to find a way to stack a bunch of wins because of the strength of schedule.
What also is going to be interesting about it is that James Franklin could never get past the top 5 opponents, which were in large part Ohio State and Michigan. And it depends on how Michigan starts the season. I don't think they'll be top 5 when Penn State plays them. So you might be able to just keep racking up wins and never have that stat come up to compare it against James Franklin.
You ready for a few more interesting quirks from this schedule?
Yep.
The Rutgers Scarlet Knights, 0 West Coast road trips. They are the only team with 0 West Coast road trips. Rutgers road games are to Chestnut Hill, to College Park, Maryland, to Chicago to play Northwestern, to Madison, and to Happy Valley to play Penn State. All those years, that it's so funny. All those years in the Big Ten East, Rutgers seems to be saving. Actually, I did read Rutgers is in a little bit of financial trouble recently.
Oh yeah,
maybe we're saving money. No West Coast road trips. Good job, Big Ten, looking out for our guys.
That would actually be funny if that was a reason why they didn't. What were they? $177 million
in debt.
Yeah, way to go.
Oregon Ducks, two bye-related quirks. Kind of early bye week. They get the bye in week 5 after playing Boise State, Oklahoma State, Portland State, and USC. That's 8 games in a row, including the stretch of at Illinois. You got the Northwestern at home, then back east to go play in Columbus against Ohio State, then back west against Michigan, then east to go play Michigan State, then back west for Washington.
That is brutal. That is a rough stretch of games, and the travel will be nightmarish for Oregon Ducks.
With no breaks, too. Yeah, that's a tough go of it for Oregon. And but if you thought that was tough, did you take a gander at Northwestern? Northwestern's got a bye in week 2.
Yeah.
That means 11 games in a row. They'll get their warm up. I believe that's South Dakota State, right?
Yeah, the Jackrabbits. Yep.
Yeah, and then after that, it is 11 games in a row. Tough stuff along the way. Any other big pictures? Yeah.
The other quirk that I was surprised, I know we're going to talk about the ACC. The ACC has several teams playing week 0, and I've actually looked at this trend and been like, I was expecting the Big Ten to maybe take advantage of that opportunity. Instead, you have one team that still hasn't even announced their week 0 opponent. It is USC. Of course, the Notre Dame game was the one that's out. I'm sure it'll be some juggernaut in week 0, but the advantage of 2 bye weeks for them. That's the week 0 advantage. You get that game early. They have 2 byes within there. If you're a USC fan, with considering what's coming back, bringing Gary Patterson in to run the defense, like this year supposing to be a big step forward. You mentioned playoffs or bust. I think if it's not the playoffs for USC, I know there's already some fans who are sort of split on Lincoln Riley. I think there'll be some very, very understandably frustrated USC fans. You got rid of the Notre Dame game specifically to challenge for the playoffs, and that one loss. What if we were 10-2? Like, if you're not 10-2 or better, I think it's an extremely disappointing season for USC.
Well-timed buys too.
Yeah. Oh, they're perfect. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, USC, they've got the Oregon game, which I think is honestly like one of my favorite games, just because it's so early in the season to be able to get things rocking and rolling. They follow that up with Washington. So Oregon and Washington both come to the Coliseum week 4, week 5. Then they head out to Happy Valley to play Penn State. So Oregon, Washington, Penn State, break. Then they go play in Camp Randall against Wisconsin, return home for the Ohio State game. That's obviously massive. Break, reset, and then they play Indiana. So that means a break between Ohio State and Indiana, a break after the Oregon, Washington, Penn State run. So in terms of trying to figure out the rhythms of the season, another thing we always like to look at, then I would say that that's an advantage here for the Trojans.
Huge advantage. Big year for them.
Do you have I've got a list of my favorite games.
Ooh, what you got?
Okay. You want me to go 5-1 or 1-5?
5-1. I want some drama to build up.
All right. My number 5 favorite game on the 2026 Big Ten schedule, Indiana at Michigan. I like Indiana at Michigan. This game's on October the 24th because the Hoosiers are going to get to not only go to the Big House, but this is a really good coaching matchup between Kyle Whittingham and Curt Cignetti, 2 coaches that are very much going to be trying to establish an identity and a culture, and this is going to be a good test against each other for Indiana. I think that you have a little bit of a trap spot because it is the week after you play host to Ohio State. So win or lose, are you either going to get caught on the other side of it? So I like that as a good test for the Hoosiers. Indiana at Michigan, October 24th is my number 5.
Love it. I think it's an outstanding game for number 5. Curious to see where you're going with 4.
Oklahoma at Michigan. Sooners coming to town, return visit. The idea that game ended up meaning so much to Oklahoma by the end of the season, really helping them be able to get into the college football playoff. Can Michigan, with Kyle Whittingham, be able to get that same kind of success? And also September 12th, let's go early season. I need it, need it along the way.
Absolutely. And the game was not that far off last year in Oklahoma with Bryce Underwood, another year of experience under his belt. You mentioned Kyle Whittingham. I think the coaching staff will be better. Huge opportunity for them at the Big House.
Number 3, November 7th, Oregon at Ohio State. We remember the classic 2 years ago when the Buckeyes went out to Eugene. The Dan Lanning rule put into place because of the 12 men on the field. What are we going to see from 2 teams that are absolutely going to be competing for the Big Ten title? Julian Sayin against Dante Moore. One of the topics that we'll have coming up a little bit later on, who are the best returning starting quarterbacks? If Julian Sayin and Dante Moore are not very high on your list of the top returning starters in all of college football, then you're going to be like sorely, sorely mistaken. So I've got Oregon at Ohio State in the shoe as my number 3. That's November 7th.
Love it. I have high expectations for Oregon. I have high expectations for Ohio State. I mean, and if it does, one of them's going to take an L. It gives you that less room for any sort of leeway going down the stretch. That's a really good one.
No 12-0, Danny. I'm telling
Nope.
you, there will not be a single 12-0 team in the
I'm
Big
gonna
Ten.
find one. I'm gonna find one. It's gonna be
Number
off the radar.
2.
Yeah.
I think it. I'm just gonna say it. I think it's 2. I think it's 2. It's in Austin. It's also on September 12th. It's the Buckeyes going to play against Texas. And while we are talking about the Big Ten schedules here, it is undeniable that the Texas side of this is so intriguing.
Yes.
I mean, the all or nothing opportunity. Arch Manning looked overwhelmed the first time that he played Matt Patricia's Ohio State defense. Now he gets a second look at him. Steve Sarkisian gets a second look at him. Texas has gone into the transfer portal. They have loaded up on talent to surround Arch Manning in the 2026 season with the best chance possible to make a run at a national championship. Ohio State believes it should be right back in the mix for the national championship. Both of these teams should be in the college football playoff next season. So yeah, it seems like I'm getting low-hanging fruit. But yeah, my number 2 is Ohio State at Texas, September 12th.
I think it'll be a better game than last year because Julian Sayin didn't light it up either. He was making his first start too. Now you've got 2 experienced quarterbacks with a lot of weapons around them. I think that game will be better than last year's game.
Pick a winner. January 28th.
I'll go Texas at home.
Texas at home. That would feel proper for the split.
Yeah, I think so. Trust me, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Ohio State won, but I do think, I don't know though. It's going to be, Texas will be favored. Do you think that's safe?
Yes.
2.5 points, something like that?
Yeah. Just a home field. I mean, the place is going to be absolutely bonkers. But my number 1, it is a rematch of the 13-10 Big Ten championship game. The fact that we get Ohio State in Bloomington on October the 17th. If you don't think the world famous Ohio State Buckeyes are rolling into the champ's house with a chip on their shoulder, I mean, that is a walk in your trap kind of game. They want to take that game over. They want to make a statement. The villainy of the Ohio State Buckeyes in 2026 will be on full display. And the Indiana Hoosiers, no longer the upstart plucky underdogs, no longer the band of misfits. The Indiana Hoosiers with a target square on their back right in the middle of October, having to defend it against Ohio State. I think it's going to be emotional. I think it's going to be hard hitting, just the way the Big Ten title game was. Fired up for that one. That's my number 1 game on the Big Ten schedule.
So no Ohio State, Michigan.
Nope.
Greatest rivalry in the sport. Didn't even make it.
Did not make it. The other one that just missed the cut was Oregon at USC. Those were my 6 and 7.
I would say, it's kind of, which is kind of crazy how fast this has evolved. We've seen rivalries develop in the SEC, kind of ebbs and flows with LSU, Bama, at times, Tennessee, Bama. You see these different rivalries kind of ebb and flow with, I don't think we've ever in history seen Ohio State, Indiana as a rivalry.
Right.
But for the third year, kind of having split the first couple times and having Will Howard with the cigarette and stomping it out and then losing that opportunity at an undefeated season and a great spot in the college football playoff. Yeah, I think when you wrote it down, when you had Indiana, Michigan at 5, in my notes, I was like, Indiana, Ohio State, is that going to make the list? So I'm glad you had it at 1 because that was my first reaction. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, the Iron Bowl has at times, remember when we were like, the Iron Bowl some years is a regular game? And I said that it was 6th. I listed them, I put them together because I was going to do a conference only and a non-con included.
Right.
So since I was non-con included, I added a couple extra, but Michigan at Ohio State was my 6. Oregon at USC was my 7. And the other part of that too is I kind of like the mid-October date in terms of a check-in, a tone setter. That Ohio State Oregon game was in early, October 12th, a couple years ago. And think about how that was so fun to be able to set the course for both of those teams and eventually set up the rematch in the Rose Bowl that the Buckeyes were able to get their revenge with.
It's good to see Wisconsin Now, the schedule is not easy, but for back-to-back seasons, they had maybe 1, 2, or 3 as far as toughest schedules in the country because they had Bama, both of those. Now, they still get Notre Dame. That will not be easy week 1. But I do think it is more manageable for Luke Fickell without Ohio State, without Penn State, or they do have Penn State, without Michigan. I think this is an opportunity for Luke Fickell to save his job for another season. I think they're going to be better.
Great call. I'm glad that you mentioned that because I actually think Wisconsin, outside of Penn State, jumped out to me as one of the more manageable. The Wisconsin Badgers miss Ohio State. They miss Oregon. They miss Michigan. They miss Indiana. You mentioned the Notre Dame game. That's at Lambeau Field. 50-50 split on that one. But that's that is a nice reprieve from having one of the most difficult schedules in the entire country as Luke Fickell tries to salvage this thing. Another one that looks a little bit not overwhelmingly manageable, but the Illinois Fighting Illini. You've got Oregon coming to your place. Your West Coast trip is out to play Bob Chesney's UCLA Bruins. You've got a very middle of the season bye week.
Mm-hmm.
Play Ohio State, but no Indiana, no Michigan, no USC. It's an okay draw there for the Illini.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. Tom's got to be pretty excited about that.
I mean, at 12-0, I think Illini by a billion.
I was looking at anybody who's just surprised who dodges, Ohio State, Michigan, and Oregon, but now you can't dodge Indiana. There aren't that many easy ones. I like your call on the no undefeateds.
Yep,
I like it.
Anything else on Big Ten before we hit a break and pivot to the ACC?
I don't think so.
All right.